There's a unique weight that settles on the shoulders of those who begin their investment journey later in life. The ticking clock, once a distant hum, now feels like a drumbeat, urging action, sometimes with a hint of desperation. It's a landscape where the usual advice might feel insufficient, where the stakes can seem amplified, and where the temptation to rush to compensate for lost time can lead down perilous paths. This isn't about lamenting the past, it's about acknowledging the present reality for the late bloomer investor. The challenge isn't merely about accumulating wealth, it's about doing so with a clarity and precision that the time constraints demand. Starting late doesn't inherently mean falling behind. It simply means the path forward requires a different kind of navigation. It demands a heightened awareness, a sharper focus, and most critically, a conscious avoidance of the behavioral errors that can derail even the most well-intentioned investor. As Warren Buffett wisely put it, the most important thing to do when you find yourself in a hole is to stop digging. For those beginning their investment odyssey later, the hole is often dug by unexamined habits, emotional responses, and ingrained misconceptions about how markets truly work. Stopping that digging by understanding and sidestepping these behavioral pitfalls is not just important, it is paramount. This journey is about transforming perceived liabilities into distinct advantages. It's about leveraging a perhaps more developed perspective, a greater understanding of life's true priorities, and channeling that into a disciplined, data-driven approach. Over the next few minutes, we will explore 5 specific behavioral pitfalls that disproportionately affect investors starting later in life. More importantly, we will equip you with the insight and actionable strategies to not only avoid them but to build a robust, sustainable foundation for your financial future, proving that the wisdom of experience, when coupled with informed strategy, is a powerful ally. The first behavioral pitfall we must confront is the catch-up urgency trap. This is the insidious psychological pressure that whispers, "You're behind, you must make up for lost time, and you need to do it now." It's a powerful, often fear-driven impulse to chase extraordinarily high, unrealistic returns. The thinking goes that only aggressive, high-risk strategies can possibly bridge the gap. But when time is a more limited resource, this very urgency can become the architect of ruin. Consider the data. Historical market returns, while robust over long decades, are not guaranteed, especially over shorter, more compressed periods. Studies on sequence of return risk starkly illustrate how a few significant losses early on, when you have less time to recover, can disproportionately devastate a portfolio compared to someone with decades ahead of them. Chasing those seemingly necessary high returns often means embracing speculative baits, assets with shaky fundamentals, or strategies that carry an outsized risk of capital impairment. This is precisely the opposite of what a later stage investor needs. Benjamin Graham, the father of value investing, taught us the critical importance of the margin of safety. When you have less time, preserving your capital becomes paramount. Instead of trying to outrun the market with risky gambles, the wiser strategy is to focus on compounding stable, predictable returns from quality assets. This means a disciplined, risk-managed approach built on genuine diversification and a deep understanding of the underlying value of your investments, not on the fleeting promises of speculative gains. Think of it as establishing a risk budget, allocating risk deliberately and cautiously, tailored precisely to your shorter time horizon. Imagine a marathon runner who realizes they've started late. They instinctively know they cannot sprint the entire race. To do so would be to burn out, to risk injury, and to guarantee failure. Instead, they must adopt a smart pacing strategy, conserve their energy, and focus on efficient movement. They prioritize finishing strong, not on a suicidal dash. This is the mindset required for the late bloomer investor. It's about intelligent pacing, capital preservation, and steady, consistent progress, not a desperate sprint into the unknown. The second behavioral pitfall for investors starting later in life is succumbing to the fear of missing out, or FOMO, particularly on hype cycles instead of genuine value. This is the urge to chase trending assets or hot sectors, amplified by media noise, driven by the anxiety that the opportunity train is departing without them. History offers stark warnings. Past bubbles, like the dot-com era or speculative surges in digital assets, show how late entrants often buy at the peak, absorbing significant losses. This contrasts sharply with value investors who meticulously focus on intrinsic worth. Forensic accounting frequently reveals companies at the zenith of hype already exhibiting detached valuations, yet the emotional pull of FOMO overrides rational analysis and fundamental truth. The hidden reality is that these hype cycles are rarely built on sustainable growth. They are primarily fueled by speculation and herd psychology. The fear of missing out often masks a deficit in analytical rigor and an emotional reaction to market chatter, rather than a sound investment thesis. To navigate this, the crucial strategy is cultivating a robust valuation framework. Learn to distinguish between truly innovative companies with solid prospects and fleeting speculative speculative fads. Practice Warren Buffett's principle of operating within your circle of competence. Invest only in what you understand. If an asset or sector is too complex to grasp its intrinsic value with confidence, it's likely not the place for your capital, especially when time is a precious, limited resource. Consider this analogy. A late bloomer at a buffet might instinctively grab the most visually appealing, popular dishes. They might take large portions without truly tasting them, only to find the food is overly seasoned or not to their liking. Meanwhile, simpler, healthier, and more nourishing options might be overlooked. The objective isn't to sample everything, but to choose wisely for sustained well-being and long-term benefit. The third pitfall for those beginning their investment journey later in life is the all-or-nothing approach to portfolio construction. This manifests into opposing, yet equally detrimental, ways. On one hand, there's the tendency to over-concentrate capital into a handful of assets perceived as sure things, often driven by a desire to make up for lost time with a few big wins. On the other extreme, some investors over-diversify, spreading their limited capital across so many holdings that returns become diluted and effective management becomes an insurmountable task. A data-driven perspective reveals the nuance. Concentrated portfolios, while potentially offering higher returns if those few bets pay off, carry significant risk. For an investor with less time to recover from a downturn, a few poorly chosen sure things can be catastrophic. Conversely, excessive diversification, often mistaken for prudence, can lead to what's termed divorcification, when time is short and capital needs to work efficiently. Spreading resources too thinly can dilute potential gains to the point where meaningful wealth accumulation becomes improbable. The goal is not simply to own many things, but to own the right things managed effectively. Conventional wisdom often preaches that more diversification is always better. While diversification is undoubtedly crucial for managing risk, especially for late bloomers, there's a point of diminishing returns. True financial intelligence lies in finding the optimal balance, enough diversification to mitigate undue risk, but not so much that it hinders growth or becomes unmanageable. The actionable strategy here is to focus on what can be termed intelligent concentration. This involves holding a deliberately smaller number of high-quality assets. These are companies or funds where you possess a deep understanding and high conviction, backed by thorough research. Consider constructing a core satellite portfolio. A solid core of stable, diversified investments forms the foundation, complemented by a few select satellite holdings chosen for their specific growth potential. This approach balances necessary risk management with the imperative for efficient capital deployment. Think of building a sturdy bridge. You need strong, well-placed pillars to bear the load. These represent your core, high-conviction investments. If you rely on only a single, untested pillar, the entire structure is perilous. Yet, if you try to support the bridge with dozens of weak, unstable, or poorly understood supports, the collective weight will cause it to buckle. The art lies in selecting a robust yet manageable number of strong pillars. The fourth pitfall, particularly potent for investors starting later in life, is information overload paralysis. In today's hyperconnected world, financial data, news headlines, and endless opinions bombard us constantly. For the late bloomer, this deluge can be overwhelming. Instead of leading to clarity, it often results in analysis paralysis, where vast amounts of information are gathered, yet decisive action remains elusive, hampered by confusion or the fear of making an irreversible wrong choice. This is deeply rooted in how our brains react under perceived pressure. Cognitive biases like analysis paralysis and decision fatigue are amplified when time feels short. The brain craves certainty, a solid ground on which to base decisions. However, the market, by its very nature, offers constant uncertainty. This clash between the desire for certainty and the reality of market dynamics can lead to a crippling state of inaction. The sheer volume of data can obscure the vital signal from the pervasive noise, effectively stalling any meaningful progress. The hidden truth here is that the objective is not to know absolutely everything about every potential investment. That is an impossible and often counterproductive endeavor. Instead, the focus must be on knowing enough about the right things, the fundamental drivers of value and risk relevant to your chosen strategy. To break free from this paralysis, developing a structured, repeatable investment process is essential. This involves setting clear, objective criteria for your research and decision making. Define what constitutes sufficient information for you to act. Then, crucially, implement a decision deadline for evaluating investment opportunities. This creates a sense of urgency that pushes you toward action, breaking the cycle of perpetual analysis. As Benjamin Graham, a beacon of rational investing, observed, the investor's chief problem is likely to be his own emotions. This pitfall is a prime example. It's a scenario where fear and indecision, amplified by information overload, conspire to override rational action, leaving potential gains on the table and progress stalled. The fifth and final pitfall for investors investors starting later in life is the legacy of old habits. This is the tendency to rigidly adhere to financial habits or investment strategies that may have served well in earlier life stages or different market conditions, but have become ineffective or even detrimental now. As we age and our financial circumstances change, clinging to outdated approaches can significantly hinder our ability to achieve our goals. Consider a common real-world example. An investor who achieved success in their youth through aggressive growth strategies. They might instinctively continue to pursue high-risk, high-reward plays, failing to acknowledge the fundamental shift required as they age. The need for capital preservation and steady income generation often increases, while the time available to recover from significant losses diminishes. Yet, the old, familiar strategy persists, often out of comfort or a reluctance to adapt. The dangerous assumption here is that what worked before will work again. Market dynamics are not static. They evolve. More importantly, our personal financial needs and time horizons change dramatically throughout life. A strategy that was appropriate for building wealth in one's 20s or 30s may be entirely unsuitable for one's 50s or 60s. Successful investing demands adaptability, a willingness to recalibrate strategies as circumstances shift. The actionable strategy is to conduct an honest, critical self-assessment of your current financial approach. Be open to rebalancing your portfolio, de-risking your holdings, and potentially shifting your focus towards income generation or capital preservation as retirement or other significant financial milestones draw nearer. This requires embracing lifelong learning in finance, staying informed about how market conditions and personal needs interact. Think of a ship captain. To navigate successfully, they must constantly adjust their course and sails in response to changing winds and currents. They cannot stubbornly maintain the original heading if it is leading them away from their intended destination. Similarly, late-blooming investors must be adaptable captains of their financial journey, willing to adjust their strategies to ensure they reach their desired harbor. We've journeyed through the landscape of investing, specifically for those beginning their journey later in life, and illuminated 5 critical behavioral pitfalls that can derail progress. The catch-up urgency trap, the seductive allure of FOMO on hype cycles, the dangerous extremes of portfolio concentration or over-diversification, the paralyzing effect of information overload, and the stubborn adherence to legacy habits. These aren't mere theoretical concepts. They are the psychological hurdles that, if unaddressed, can turn a late start into a significant disadvantage. However, understanding these pitfalls is not about fostering fear. It's about empowering you with foresight. Starting late presents unique challenges, yes, but it is by no means a disqualifier for building substantial wealth. The key lies in awareness, disciplined strategy, and a commitment to informed decision-making. It requires a conscious effort to sidestep the emotional impulses that so often lead investors astray. Benjamin Graham, in his timeless wisdom, taught us about Mr. Market, a somewhat manic-depressive partner in our investment endeavors. Mr. Market swings wildly between irrational exuberance and deep despair. For the late bloomer, the critical skill is not to be swayed by Mr. Market's moods, but to learn to use its fluctuations to your advantage, all while staying anchored to your own rational, data-driven strategy. This means focusing on intrinsic value, understanding risk, and maintaining emotional discipline, especially when the market is shouting or whispering loudly. The path forward is paved with continuous learning and profound self-awareness. By diligently applying data-driven insights, by committing to understanding the why behind every investment decision, and by courageously confronting your own psychological tendencies, you can effectively navigate these challenges. Transforming your late start from a perceived liability into a strategic advantage is not only possible, it is achievable through informed strategy and unwavering resilience. The wisdom gained from life experiences, when coupled with rigorous financial discipline, can indeed forge a robust and sustainable financial future.